I figured we probably would. That makes sense. Well, I told Dave when he was doing it, I was like, if we didn't need it for last week too, it could have been come home to 31996, because that would have fit through the series, but
we still need to clean up this wiring.
what's up?
Sorry to keep you guys waiting.
Are you the camera guy? Oh, they just said we're waiting on our camera guy.
Well, it won't be a problem in future weeks. It was just the timing of this week. They're bounced and I sent the folder.
All right, let's kill it. I did the first one.
It's totally did it to surrender
For this week, like what Adrian just said. And I get all the way through it, like 2 times. I'm like, guys, good. Okay, I got it. John's like, oh, this is for next week. I'm like, oh, crap.
Hey, you know what I realized though, guys? The weekend after, we didn't do anything. We recorded the 2 songs, but I didn't even think about it.
We'll be able to put it as a separate thing. We can make it work. No. No, as long as you just stay live. Live the whole time.
I did not say that because I don't.
She does no lunges or juts.
Just the one. And then I stay here for a while.
The hardest one ever is when they do this.
Right. Well, I noticed when I was watching back yesterday, I do this, and you see the camera like move to grab the end of my fingers because I just can't help myself. There is that one part where I do the splits. It's a little awkward, but I think you'll get it.
And when she does the moonwalk, just make sure she closes on her feet. All right, got it? All right, here we go, guys. Whenever you're ready, Adrian.
All right. Over the last few months, it has been our great privilege as a church to watch as you guys have continued to be overwhelmingly generous in our city as we've responded to the COVID crisis by collecting food items here at church. It's been so awesome to watch all of those food items come in through the doors and then back out into the city. We're talking thousands upon thousands of items that you all have donated. We wanted to take a moment today and say thank you so much for that generosity. We're going to be continuing to collect those items until June 20th. And so we would love to encourage you to continue bringing those in between now and then. Again, that's June 20th is the last day that we will be accepting donations here of non-perishable food items. When the COVID crisis began, we were really intentional as a church about coming up with a COVID-19 response plan so that we could really show up in our city and we could show them the generosity of the people of Northeast Christian Church. It has been so awesome to see your generosity and see the ways that you continue to give, because here at the Leadville Church, we believe in unleashing the love of Jesus every day to everybody, everywhere. And that's why, as we have become kind of into this season of civil unrest here in our city, we believed that it was important that we come up with a kingdom justice response plan. And so we need you to know that we still need your generosity so that we can show up in our city, so that we can continue being the Love the Ville church in a season like this one. It's going to let us make an impact now, but it's also going to let us make an impact in the future. So if God has blessed you in this season and you have the money to give, we would love to encourage you to give right now. Pull out your phone and go to the Northeast app or go to necchurch.org/give and give generously today. As always, thank you for your generosity. Thank you for giving and helping us be a part of making a difference in our city. Before we get very far today, I wanted to take a minute actually to introduce myself. I've been here on staff for about a year, but I haven't had an opportunity to meet most of you face to face. So before I get very far, I wanted to say my name is Adrienne Feldman, and I am the online campus pastor here at Northeast. It has been so cool over the last year to live and breathe church online, which is exactly what you all have been experiencing for the last couple of months. And it's been really neat to invite you all in and show you that online church experience that I have come to love so much. Now, I said I've been on staff for about a year, but my family has actually been here for about 6 years. Here's a picture of my really super awesome family. We actually got here to Northeast when our youngest was a newborn. So we have had the opportunity of watching our family grow up here. You know, Northeast has won our hearts as we've spent these years growing here as a family. And you know, I don't know what it is about Northeast that won us over, except that when we got here, I was helplessly, hopelessly lost. I was so lost, and the people of Northeast put their arms around me. They put their arms around our family, and they took care of us, and they helped us find Jesus. So I have a question for you today. Have you ever had to look for something? I don't mean like look for something small and trivial, like when you walk in the front door of your house and you thought you hung your keys on the hook right inside the door, but instead of hanging them on the hook, you actually put them on the counter in the kitchen, and so you find them the next time you walk through the kitchen. I mean like really, really, really lost. Something that was so lost that you had to spend a really long time looking for it. Once I got home from work and I set my car keys on the arm of the couch inside my apartment. And then I went about the rest of my evening and having a great day. I woke up the next morning to leave for work and I went to get my keys and they were gone. They had vanished. I looked everywhere. I looked under all the furniture and around everything that I could find, and I couldn't find my keys anywhere. So after a minute, I realized I was going to be late for work. So I called my boss and I said, hey, I'm going to be late. I can't find my keys. I searched for those keys for about an hour. And after an hour of looking, I finally asked my roommate to drive me to work. I called a friend to bring me home from work at the end of the day. And for the next several days, I spent every available moment searching for my car keys. It was awful. You guys, I emptied the refrigerator. I dug all the stuff out to see if maybe I had stuck the keys in there while I was putting the groceries away. They could have been anywhere, but I just couldn't find them. And a few days into this adventure, I called the Kia dealership. I said, hey, I bought my car from you. Can you make me a new key? And they said, yes, actually we can. We've got a code we can plug in. We'll make you a new key. I went to the dealership. I picked up the key. I brought it back, and it wouldn't fit in my car. As it turns out, a typo in the dealership's documentation meant that there was no key. There would never be a new key that would fit in my car unless I found my own keys. Well, one day, about a week into this adventure, one of my friends came to the apartment and he pushed past me into the room and he said, I have an idea. And I was like, okay, I think you've kind of lost your mind. And he grabbed the end of the couch and he lifted it up over his head. And when he did, I heard a jingle. It was my keys. And they were inside the couch. They had slid down the arm of the couch, in through a hole in the lining, and they had fallen into the bottom of the couch. They were so stuck inside that we actually had to cut open the lining in order to get them out. You know what's the worst thing about losing my keys like this? It wasn't that I lost my keys. They aren't worth very much on their own. They're just these little tiny pieces of metal. It was that I lost my freedom. I couldn't come and go whenever I wanted to. I had to rely on my friends to take me to work, to take me to the grocery store. I had to rely on my roommates to let me in and out of the apartment because not only were my car keys missing, my apartment keys were missing too. I lost my freedom and it was awful. You get that, don't you? I mean, this is America. And in America, we love our freedom, don't we? Now, before I get very far, I have to say, don't think of freedom today. When I'm talking about freedom, I'm talking about personal freedom. I'm not talking about the types of freedom that marginalized groups in our society have had to fight for and are still fighting for today. Today, I'm talking about personal freedom. Here in America, we define that personal freedom as the ability to do what we want to do, whenever we want to do it, no matter what. And we fight for that freedom, don't we? We fight for our freedom. We fight so hard for these freedoms because we believe that we're entitled to them. In the United States, we believe that we have all kinds of freedoms, like the freedom of association, the freedom to gather with whatever group of people we want to be with, that we can belong to any group we want to belong to. We believe that we have the freedom of belief, to worship whoever or whatever we want to, whenever we want to, wherever we want to, even during a pandemic. We believe that we have freedom of speech, to say whatever we want to say, whenever we want to say it, however we want to say it, no matter who it hurts. We believe that we have the freedom of privacy. We should have all the privacy that we want, even if we checked that box on our phone that lets it track us everywhere we go. We believe that we have the freedom of information, the freedom to know everything about everything. And along with that freedom to know everything about everything, we have the freedom to be right about everything too. We believe that we should have the freedom of mobility, to go wherever we want, whenever we want to go there. We believe that we have the freedom of wealth, to work hard and get paid well for it. Freedom is something that we work for in our society. It's something that we believe in our society. It is like the foundation of who we are as Americans. Freedom is what matters to us. Now, again, please hear me when I say freedom is important. Freedom is something that there are people in our society who are fighting for it right now. Freedom is something that God has given us that allows us to make choices, and it allows us to make the decision to love each other. That kind of freedom is good, and it is given to us by God, and people should be fighting for that freedom. But there are some kinds of freedom that take over our personal lives. This pursuit of personal freedom, it just takes over everything we are, and we fight and we fight and we fight and we fight for it. And you know how I know that we do that? Why else are you working 50, 60, 70-hour weeks? Why are you checking your email before you get out of bed in the morning and last thing before you go to sleep at night? We chase freedom in our society day in, day out because it matters to us. In the Bible, there is a story in Luke 15 that Jesus tells about someone who was pursuing freedom relentlessly. It's this guy who we call the prodigal son. Now, prodigal is a word that we use in Christian circles to mean wayward. And this guy kind of gets a bad rap. We have this idea that this wayward son has just drifted off because he has lost his way. Right? Here's how the story goes. It's Luke chapter 15. We're going to start in verse 11. A man had 2 sons. The younger son told his father, "I want my share of your estate now before you die." So his father agreed to divide his wealth between his sons. A few days later, this younger son packed all of his belongings and moved to a distant land. And there he wasted all his money in wild living. Now, I think the prodigal son gets a bad rap. And like I said, we use that word to mean wayward. But what if I told you that the word prodigal actually means recklessly extravagant? See, all in all, I mean, yes, the prodigal son made some really weird decisions, but he was just kind of reckless about it. The weird thing about this story is that in its context, it might not make a whole lot of sense to us. So let me paint the picture in more modern times, okay? Imagine there is a man who has 2 sons, and he also has 3 stores. 3 businesses, 3 stores. And he has already set up his will to say that when he dies, he's going to give the first 2 stores to his oldest son and the second to his youngest son. Well, one day his younger son comes to him and he says, okay, Dad, listen, I want you to square up your will right now as if you died. And I want you to give me all the money. So sell off the store and give me all the cash right now. Now, for some reason, his dad says yes, which is just bananas, right? But his dad says yes, and he gives him all the money, and the kid takes off. He takes off without any connection to his family and with all the money that he could have imagined. Now, I don't think that his motives were awful. Was he unwise? Absolutely. Was he disrespectful? Yes. You don't look at your dad and say, let's pretend you're dead and give me my inheritance now. But you know what I think he was looking for? I think he was looking for freedom. And he found it. He went looking for freedom and he found it. See, he took the money and it's like he went to Vegas and he blew it all. He blew every penny on casinos and prostitutes and baby tigers. Now, I don't know if you know this, but you can buy a baby tiger for $2,000. So he could have had a lot of fun. And I think it probably was really, really fun. At first, he was free. He was so free. He didn't have all those family entanglements tying him down. He had all the money he could have imagined, and now, who knows, maybe he had a baby tiger. And it was probably really fun. He wasted all his money in wild living. That's what Luke 15 says. And that was all good and great and wonderful until his money ran out. I think we live that way, though, don't we? I'm not saying that any of you go out and you say, okay, Dad, you're dead to me. I want all your money now. But I think we do this thing where we pursue personal freedom. It looks like this. It looks like sacrificing time with your family so that you can climb the corporate ladder. It looks like avoiding that difficult conversation with your spouse because you just don't want to get into it right now. Maybe it looks like not calling your grandma because she might guilt you into coming to visit or guilt you about the last time you didn't visit. And at first, it feels good, doesn't it? You get the raise, you get that new position. You miss out on the conversation, and besides, your wife was just going to rip you a new one anyway. It feels awful. You didn't have to do that. And you missed out on the guilt trip from grandma. You've got your freedom. And that's awesome. Until you realize that while you were chasing down your career, you missed watching your kids grow up. It's great until you realize that you missed out on an opportunity to tell your wife that you love them more than this argument. It's all great until you dodge calls from your grandma and then she passes away because she didn't have that much time left. See, that's the thing about chasing down freedom. It doesn't give you anything back. This is what happened to the son in our story. We'll go on in Luke 15. About the time his money ran out, a great famine swept over the land and he began to starve. He persuaded a local farmer to hire him, and the man sent him into his fields to feed the pigs. The young man became so hungry that even the pods he was feeding the pigs looked good to him. But no one gave him anything. See, when the son in the story realized that all of this freedom didn't give him anything back, he had to go out looking for sustenance. He went out looking for sustenance by getting a job. But that's the thing. The relentless pursuit of personal freedom doesn't give you anything back. The relentless pursuit of personal freedom will lead you to starve, just like the son in the story. Now, I know most of you live in the east end of Louisville, and most of us don't know what it feels like to starve physically. But you know what starving looks like in this freedom-chasing culture? Starving looks like drinking until you pass out every night because you just want to turn it off. Starving looks like binge eating to numb the pain. Starving looks like scrolling social media for hours and hours and hours because you don't want to be alone with your thoughts. Your kids think you're working anyway. For some of you, starving looks like a long string of non-committed relationships. One night stand after another. Maybe starving looks like waking up with this feeling in the morning that there has got to be more than this. One day I was having a conversation with a friend who had just gotten this job with an outrageous paycheck. We're talking, this paycheck was double what he was making before, and more than he ever dreamed he was going to be able to make in his lifetime. And at this moment, he realized he could have everything he ever wanted. And that's what he told me. He said, I can live where I want to live, and I can eat what I want to eat, and I can go wherever I want to go. I can vacation whenever I want to. I thought I had it all. But I still feel empty. I don't understand. You know, when I went off to college, I had this opportunity to chase down freedom in a brand new way. I didn't have any rules, and my parents were like 1,500 miles away. I could do whatever I wanted, so I did. Now, I was a really straight-laced kid, and so my doing whatever I wanted to do looked like eating ice cream for dinner every single night. I stayed out as late as I wanted to, and I slept as late as I felt like in the morning. I skipped my classes because nobody was there to make sure that I went to class. And it was awesome. It was amazing. It was so cool right up until the moment that it wasn't. Because at the end of my freshman year of college, I found myself 60 pounds heavier and really, really sick. I was in and out of doctor's offices all the time. Nobody could figure out what was wrong with me. I was dealing with debilitating depression. You know what started out as sleeping as late as I wanted to and staying in bed until noon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon became this illness where I couldn't get out of bed at all. I was failing all of my classes, every single one of them. And I was out of cash. I couldn't even make it home. I didn't have enough money to fill my gas tank. I had my freedom, and it gave me nothing, and I was starved. And it looked like eating a pint of ice cream every night, except on a really bad night when my boyfriend would bring me a quart instead of a pint, and bite after bite after bite, I was hoping that maybe something would help me feel better. Only nothing made me feel better. This is where the son in the story ends up. He's starving, you guys. And so he comes up with a plan. And I love this about the son in the story because I think we do this. I think we come up with a plan. When we get to that place where we just don't know what to do and we feel like we've fallen too far, we start hatching these ideas. Like, maybe I can't ever have what I had before. Maybe I'm never going to be the person I was before, but I think if I work and work and work and work, I can get myself out of this. Here's what it says. When he finally came to his senses, he said to himself, "At home, even the hired servants have food enough to spare. And here I am dying of hunger. I will go home to my father and I'll say, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and you. I am no longer worthy of being called your son. Please take me on as a hired servant. So he takes his plan and his idea that he can just become a servant in his father's household because then at least he won't starve. And he goes home. He returns home to his father. And while he was still a long ways off, his father saw him coming. Filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son. He embraced him and he kissed him. Now, you guys, the son in our story thought he was going to have to go home and be a servant. He had spent all of this time searching for personal freedom and searching for sustenance. He was looking for something to fill this void in his world. And when he started coming down the road, you know what he found? The father was looking for him. Now, it would have been easy. It would have been so easy for the father to turn on his heel and walk away. It would have been easy for the father to say, "No, you're not mine. You're not my son. You said I was dead to you." It would have been easy for the father to say, "You have to pay your dues before you come back here." That's not what the father in this story did. He went running. See, the father had spent day after agonizing day looking down the road, waiting for his son to come home. And when he saw him coming down the road, he took off running. And he threw his arms around his baby boy because he loved him. Because he loved him. And when this happens, the son lets out this heart-wrenching confession. He says, "Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you. I am no longer worthy of being called your son." Hey, listen. If you're feeling this way today, if you're feeling like, I've gone too far, I've done too much, I've walked too far away from where I was meant to be, I can't come home, I'm not worthy of love, I'm not worthy of acceptance, I'm not worthy of any of that. If you're feeling that way today, I want you to hear what the Father does next. His father said to the servants, "Quick, bring the finest robe in the house and put it on him. Get a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet. And kill the calf we've been fattening. We must celebrate with a feast. For this son of mine was dead and has now returned to life. He was lost, but now he's found." You know, I think sometimes when we think we've gone too far, we resist returning home. But the father in this story shows us something absolutely unexpected. See, in this culture, the gifts that the father offers his son are all things that would have shown his full reinstatement as a son in this household. A ring and a robe and sandals for his feet. These are all things that would have only belonged to his child. To his child. Now, I know what you're thinking. I do. That you've gone too far. That you can't turn back now. You know how I know? I've been there. I told you earlier, it has been 6 years since I showed up at Northeast, and in the grand scheme of things, it's not that long. But when I showed up here, I was lost. See, my entire life, every single day of my life, I had spent working and searching and striving for perfection so that I could get the love and acceptance of the world. I believed that if I worked and worked and worked and worked and worked, maybe someday I would feel loved. Maybe if I worked and worked and worked, I could be enough for the world, and everybody around me would notice me and love me and care about me, and I'd be all right. And I was empty. I had nothing to give. And then one day, I was driving down the road here in Louisville. It was Breckenridge Lane. And I just felt lost. So I started to pray. And I said, God, help me. Please help me. I don't know what to do. I am so lost. And after a lifetime of working and working and working to earn love and acceptance, finally, for the first time ever, I felt loved. I felt known and loved and seen by God, because you know what? He was looking for me. He was looking down that road and he was waiting for me to come home. And when I made that decision to come home, he didn't say, Adrian, you have been denying my grace for your entire life. You got to earn your way into this space. No, he didn't do that at all. He threw his arms around me because I'm his daughter. You know, we talked earlier about how the word prodigal means recklessly extravagant. You know who's recklessly extravagant in this story? The father. He's got a son who wanted to blow the entire fortune, who took whatever he wanted and didn't do anything for the family in return, and he showered him with love. Reckless, extravagant love. Because you guys, that's what God's grace looks like. We worship a God who loves us to death. We worship a God who is so extravagant with his love that he sent his son to die for us. Talk about extravagant love. And you know what you have to do? All you have to do is come home. There's a father just waiting for you to come home. He sees you and he knows you and he loves you and he just wants you to come home. Now, for some of you, coming home is going to look like making a couple of changes in your life. For some of you, coming home is going to look like coming back to church. It's never been easier to come back to church. We're online all the time. For some of you, coming home is going to look like taking that step for baptism. Here at Northeast, we want to make sure you know we don't believe that you have to be perfect before you decide to get baptized. Baptism is not a finish line when you have fixed everything in your life. You don't have to hatch an elaborate plan to be good enough before you make that decision to get baptized. Baptism is a starting point. It's that moment when you say yes to Jesus. Yes, I want to come home. So we wanted to make it really easy for you. If you're ready to make that decision for baptism today, don't wait any longer. Pick up your phone right now and text Jesus is why to 31996. One of our pastors will follow up with you this week. We'll help you take those next steps. And you know what? We want to celebrate with you. We are so thrilled that you're making this decision, and we want to throw our arms around you and walk with you. Hey, all you got to do is come home. Just come home. Your Father is looking down the road, just watching and waiting for you. Will you come home?